Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this, the 50th celebration of distinguished teaching at Berkeley. All right. Yes. I'm Glenda Hall, chair of the Committee on Teaching, and I'm very happy to take part in today's ceremony in which 3 professors will be named distinguished teachers. They join 250 previous recipients since 1959. The Distinguished Teaching Award is the highest honor that this campus bestows to recognize excellence in teaching, and so today we are honoring the best of the best teachers on campus. I can promise you that you'll leave today's event inspired and maybe a little bit or more than a little bit in awe of the teaching that you'll hear about. The recipients this year, as in previous years, combine great knowledge in their fields with an equally big desire and an equally expansive capacity to share what they know inside their classrooms and beyond. This is the true distinction, isn't it, of a great research university. Faculty who are thrilled by, who are driven by discovery and creation, and who take a deep and sustained satisfaction and pride in helping others achieve. So a special welcome to the students in the audience today. This ceremony is also a celebration of our students at Berkeley. There are no students like the Berkeley students. They inspire us, they challenge us, they delight us, and they raise our teaching to greater heights. So demonstrating the commitment on the part of the faculty to making our students' educations here at Berkeley truly superb is the reason for the ceremony today. Personally speaking, I'm very glad to be teaching at Berkeley now, because this is a moment when teaching has come to the fore on campus in a variety of ways. We now have Chancellor Dirk's initiative on undergraduate education to look forward to, and many other initiatives as well. So I hope you'll take inspiration from this ceremony today, even as we experience new challenges around teaching, including changes in admissions and the Janus face of new technologies, and so on. But even though we have these challenges, I hope you'll be energized to participate in and challenge and shape the conversations and new initiatives around teaching on campus. So now it's my special pleasure to be able to introduce today our new Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, Claude Steele. We welcome him to Berkeley, and it's great to have the occasion of this ceremony to introduce him to some of the excellent teaching on our campus. As most of you know, Provost Steele's career has been directed toward expanding access in higher education and enabling all students to be successful. Goals, of course, consistent with promoting and supporting excellent teaching. When his appointment was announced this semester, I think the whole campus was delighted, so aligned he is with our mission at Berkeley and our values as a public university, and so much has he walked the walk. So Provost Steele, welcome.
Thank you, Glenda, for that introduction and that launch of the evening. This is a very special evening when we as a campus come together to celebrate perhaps our most important function, which is teaching, the dissemination of knowledge, the sharing of knowledge. And the Distinguished Teaching Award is the impetus for this celebration this evening, but its meaning for Berkeley is, of course, much larger than that. I might just provide a little context for that last statement, and in doing that, I will invoke a former University of California president, Clark Kerr, who I note is invoked often at the University of California at Berkeley, but I think it's for very good reason. I think he's one of the most insightful thinkers about higher education that we've ever had. And one of the ideas, one of his insights that's especially impressive to me is how out of all of the complexity of higher education, this complicated landscape, he's been able to kind of draw some simple concepts, one of which is that the university is not really a university but a multiversity, that it has multiple uses as an institution, multiple functions as an institution. It does do liberal arts education, It does do research, especially since World War II. The nation decided that our major research sites would be our universities, and this is perhaps the greatest in the world. It also is responsible for occupational training. Increasingly, it is a source of expertise to society, to our communities, our government, business, and the like. And even more recently, it directly spawns our economy in a variety of ways. So it is definitely not a university, but it is an institution with multiple functions, multiple purposes. But I think when you think about it that way, perhaps the most important thing that draws this, that ties all of this together, that makes a coherent purpose out of an institution like this, is teaching. Is the dissemination of knowledge. That is the thing that really kind of unifies these kind of complicated institutions. Teaching happens in many forms. It happens in lectures, sort of the sage on the stage kind of format. But it happens in many other ways too. Late night bull sessions in laboratories and dormitories. It happens in mentor-mentee relationships. It happens in tutoring. It happens online increasingly. It happens between different roles, between professors and students. It happens, and that is an influence that goes both ways. It happens among professors, and it happens student to student. So along with the mission of creating knowledge, perhaps even slightly ahead of the mission of creating knowledge, is the mission of teaching, of the dissemination of knowledge, of sharing knowledge and promulgating knowledge throughout society. And how well it is done, how seriously it is taken in the value structure of an institution like Berkeley is an important test of a university. So it is a fundamental function to stop on an occasion like this and to honor and to reward our excellence in teaching. It's an important institutional function to do that kind of thing, and there could be no forum any better suited to it than the forum of honoring our distinguished teachers. I'll just close by saying that at a point in my career, I was fortunate enough to get a Distinguished Teaching Award, which I'm very proud of. And I've gotten other awards, but I've moved a fair amount in recent years. And I noticed that where I hang that award is always in the most prominent position. So it's a behavioral evidence to me that it's the most, I guess it's the award I feel most proud of. So I congratulate you winners of this award. It's something I know you're going to be proud of too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pleased to introduce next Elizabeth Deacon, Professor of City and Regional Planning and Urban Design and our intrepid chair of the Berkeley Division of the Academic Senate. As the leader of our Berkeley faculty, Betty has worked on any number of issues, including getting more faculty involved in shared governance. She's been an important advocate for teaching on campus, and she's also played an important role in making sure that the range of teaching and mentoring activities that Claude just spoke about that are engaged in by our faculty receive its due. Betty.
I'd like to keep Linda here by me for this because I welcome you here on behalf of the Senate, and I'd like to point out that this is indeed an award that's given by the Senate to its own members. And Glinda has chaired the Committee on Teaching with a great deal of enthusiasm and very hard work. And she will be stepping down from that role this year. So I'd like to give her a special hand. Thank you. I'd also like to thank all the other members of the Committee on Teaching and Richard Freistadt, who serves as the staff for the committee. This is a really hard-working committee. Of the many very excellent teachers who are nominated for this award, this committee looks at dossiers, it goes and visits their classrooms, it talks to the people who've nominated them. It does a huge amount of work to really learn about their teaching and understand the many qualities that makes teaching rise to the top at a place like Berkeley, where so many of our faculty do value the teaching experience and the learning that comes back to the faculty from that experience as well. And so I think we really do owe this committee a great deal of thanks for its hard work and efforts in doing this. One of the things I'd also like to say about the committee is that this year they've been working, looking at how to improve the evaluation of teaching in general. So building on what they've learned by looking at the teaching of our very best teachers, we now are considering their recommendations to start a pilot program, which I hope will be something that will let us expand the numbers of ways that we evaluate our own teaching, and that goes into the evaluations of our faculty when they're considered for promotion and for merit increases. So stay tuned, because we'll be hearing more about that in the future. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing more about our award winners this year. And I also want to apologize. You will see me leaving a bit early, but that's because I'm teaching this evening at 6 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you, Betty. Now, I want to invite you to sit back and enjoy a most winsome part of our ceremony, and that is a film created this year, like last year, by John Shanker from the Educational Technology Services and the ETS video team. Prepare yourself to be transported into the teaching lives of each of our recipients.
My first class traumatized me. I had over-prepared for the class. I had 12 pages of notes that I thought I somehow had to get through, and I got through about 2 pages. I walked out of that class thinking I can never be a good teacher. What changed was the fact that I decided that my job is not to offer maximum coverage to students. It is to tell them a few key stories, link those stories to their present lives, and do so in a way that's compelling and interesting for them.
I remember coming into a classroom that had 150 students in it ready to study war. 2 students in particular stand out. One was a kid who always sat in the middle row in the middle seat and never took a single page of notes. And when I challenged him about this, he said, "Oh, I have perfect audio recall." It's just clear that he had taken up every word I'd ever said. The other was a very quiet student who came to office hours, had not spoken in class before, and asked me a single question at the end of office hours. She asked very quietly, "Is war necessary?" It was just an incredibly good question with no answer whatsoever, which is the hallmark of a good question. And it taught me a tremendous amount of respect for Berkeley students.
First class I taught solo was a graduate seminar, and one of the students was taking notes, and I had a moment where I thought to myself, wow, someone's actually taking my notes. And so I was flattered. At the end of the class, I saw the guy's notes, and they had nothing to do with my class, actually. I don't know what they were doing. It looked like quantum field theory to me.
Now, why didn't they correct him? Why didn't they say, no, 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 no? I tend to lecture Socratically, asking them questions, getting them to answer. But in order to achieve that, students have to feel comfortable. Students have to feel invested. And I think most importantly, students have to trust me. Eventually, I do try to get students to the point where they're used to hearing their own voices and they're participating in class discussions and learning with me. And this is, I think, the most important thing about my classes. I am learning with my students.
I've used teaching to learn about different subjects. That's enabled me to improve my research and take it in directions that I wasn't formally able to. So it equips me to move in new research directions.
There have been many memorable moments in my teaching career. One of my favorites came at the end of a very large disarmament simulation exercise for which I had invited a former US ambassador to campus. He was so impressed that he invited 2 of those students to join him on a trip to New York to participate in United Nations deliberations about nuclear weapons. And one of the students chosen was the first in his family to ever go to college, spoke English as a second language, was moved to tears by the fact that his peers had chosen him to represent the entire class. And I approached him afterwards and I said, "Have you never been to New York?" And he said, "Professor Hassner, I've never been on an airplane."
One of the classes I'm offering this semester is on sensory histories, a theme that I'm learning even as I'm reading 8 or 10 books with my students. You know, it keeps me fresh, it keeps my research agendas moving forward, but at the same time, I feel that I'm really contributing in ways to the university and to the curriculum of this university by stepping out, stepping beyond my safe zone.
Based on one argument, terrorism represents the broad grievances. In my class on war, I often have veterans or people in the ROTC program who can talk about their own experiences in ways that I could never do. In my class on religion, I have people who are members of religious faith groups who bring to the table experiences and interactions and knowledge that I could never aspire to. And so they teach me a lot.
I'm always surprised by Cal's students, just how engaged, how incredibly exciting they are, and it's one of the most stimulating parts of my job.
For the part where you solved for d shouldn't it be to the -1/2 power?
Berkeley students are masters at challenging their instructors. Getting feedback from students has been incredibly useful in shaping the way I teach. So my role is not so much to cram facts into people's minds. My job is really to act more as a facilitator.
I think when students begin to think about a world that is lots of shades of gray, it brings a certain degree of empathy. And I see my role as a teacher as someone who complicates the narrative, makes it messier.
I can remember sitting where the students are sitting and the instructor trying, I'm sure they had good intentions, but unfortunately failing to teach this particular student. I did not get it. And I remember the incredible frustration I felt. And that's why I care, because I don't want that experience for others.
Before we present the awards, I'd like to take a few moments to recognize the Committee on Teaching. And I want to let it be known that the work of the Committee on Teaching is just about the best committee service on campus. How better to spend one's time in terms of university service than coming to know in exquisite detail and firsthand the art and craft of great teaching on campus. That's the pleasurable and rewarding part. The challenging and angst-producing part of the committee's work is deliberating together long and hard and eventually having to select recipients from among the very strong sets of nominations that we always receive. The committee begins its selection process in October of each year when departments may nominate one teacher and make a case for that nomination and provide copious samples of teaching evaluations. We select finalists from that pool, and in the next stage of the process, the departments and the finalists themselves put together a vast amount more of information, including more evaluations and letters from colleagues, and also from former and current students, the nominee's teaching statement, syllabi, other course materials, and on and on. And then the committee visits each class of the nominee. These are surprise visits, and they are wonderful for the committee because we're then able to juxtapose what we've learned from reading all of those hundreds of evaluations and other material to instances of actual classroom magic. And so with all of this information, we get a comprehensive feel for what the teaching is like. This is truly, I think, a best all-around award. It has to do with teaching in the classroom, but as Betty was saying earlier, it also has to do with advising and mentoring, sponsorships and support of our undergraduate and graduate students in myriad ways, as well as wider public service related to teaching. So now I'd like to recognize the members of the Committee on Teaching this year who participated in selecting the recipients and heartily thank them for their work. The faculty members are, and would you please stand, Carl Brito from French and Comparative Literature, Karen Fellman from German, Ole Hall from Mathematics, Juan Pestana from Civil and Environmental Engineering, and by the way, Juan will be chairing the Committee on Teaching next year, staff member Richard Freistadt from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and student member Xiao Pang, the class of 2015. Thank you very much. And now, thank you. Juan Pestana and Carl Brito and I will present the awards.
Space, the final frontier. This is the voyage that all undergraduate and graduate students take when they sign for one of his classes. An excellent teacher should be knowledgeable, engaging with clear and impeccable presentation skills. He has all of these attributes. He teaches with great clarity, and his lectures are extremely well organized and flow smoothly through the different topics. He illustrates not only the connection between them, but also stresses a deep sense of motivation and urgency in the subject at hand. He fulfilled and exceeded my expectations every day without fail. He was very good at answering questions, as well as asking many of his own. His questions were never trivial and always stimulating. A problem set often revealed a fascinating facet of the universe that was just within reach of a student taking an introductory astrophysics course. Precisely the sort of problem set I value the most. These are some of the comments and accolades in Professor Schering's evaluations. Professor Eugene Chang is a professor in the Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences and a member of the UC Berkeley faculty since 2001. As a researcher, he has focused on theoretical physics, with particular emphasis on the understanding of the origin and evolution of planetary systems. He has an amazing list of 12 undergraduate and graduate courses and seminars, ranging from galactic dynamics to astrophysical fluid dynamics, or as his students refer to them, this is your galaxy on plasma. Any questions? Eugene is particularly known for his order of magnitude physics course, in which students learn to approach everyday science problems from first principles, like estimating the mileage of a car, or how many M&Ms were consumed in Obama's inauguration ball. Go figure. I believe many of us engineers appreciate that it is much better to be approximately right than precisely wrong. It is perhaps his introduction to astrophysics 1 and 2 that gathered most of the attention from the students on campus. He generates an infectious love for astrophysics that is unparalleled, as reflected in his teaching evaluations and comments from past students and colleagues. His enthusiasm, clarity, attention to detail, student engagement, and cutting-edge course material places him in a class of his own. Eugene, as he preferred to be called, is capable to explain complex topics to students who have very limited formal education in physics. One thing that really sets him apart is his ability to distill complicated physics into their tractable parts. And I quote, "On one particular instance, I recall when he derived the intimidated Saha equation in class. For those of you who do not know, the Saha ionization equation combines ideas of quantum mechanics and statistical mechanics to explain the spectral classification of stars and relates the ionization state of an element to the temperature and pressure, obviously. And I continue. He explained how every term in the equation contributes to the whole and what they did in the appropriate limits. He showed me that the equation made sense and that every term has a physical reason for being there. This student observation is in line with many others that exalt Eugene's uncanny ability to convey the concepts at the visceral gut level, while still maintaining a rigorous mathematical construct to support the developments of the course. He makes you think about a familiar concept in an unfamiliar way. After his exams, I felt drained because my brain had really been put to the test. I actually came to appreciate the elegance of his exam writing. That's a first. Similar comments are expressed in graduate courses, and I quote, Eugene's pedagogical excellence was not confined to his lectures. His problem sets were the most challenging and educational that I have ever been assigned. Throughout the reviews and comments, a common theme emerged, and it was the intensity and passion with which Eugene delivers his lectures. He's a very captivating speaker. Had I not been interested in astronomy to begin with, I am sure I will still have paid full attention during his classes because of how he teaches, passionately, persuasively, as if telling a story. He has the energy of a stage performer. Let me share a personal experience with you. As part of our work as member of the Committee on Teaching, we reviewed the dossier and also visit and observe firsthand their teaching within a classroom setting. I had the opportunity to visit Eugene's class twice. The first time, after attending 1.5 hours of lecture in his Astro 7B, I found myself with 3 pages of handwritten notes and completely worried that I did not know we had a midterm next week. Fortunately, I calmed myself down by saying, it's okay, you can always take it pass, non-pass. He is indeed a very captivating speaker. I can attest to that. Eugene's virtues span beyond the classroom environment, and he's a prolific researcher and an excellent role model for graduate students, graduate student instructors, and in particular, undergraduate students interested in research. His contribution to the Berkeley Science Network Scholarship Program for undergraduates is very much appreciated. And I quote, his contributions of time, ideas, and oversight are a gift to the campus. He has been an effective mentor to many undergraduate students on campus. Similar comments have been submitted by former graduate and PhD students. I would like to end with a quote from one of his graduate students. And I say, even now that I have taken many more graduate classes, Eugene remains the best instructor I have had. And I believe his dedication and excellence in teaching deserves recognition. And so it is. It is my privilege and distinct honor to introduce you, UC Berkeley distinguished teacher, Eugene Chang.
Thank you very much, Juan, for your kind and generous remarks. Well, what can I say? It's pretty cool what you can do with colored chalk. When the award was first announced, a former graduate student collaborator wrote me a very nice email, and he said, well, congratulations on an award that is long overdue. And I appreciated very much the sentiment. It was a very nice email, but I have to tell you, I didn't feel like that at all, that there was nothing overdue, that in the 13 years that I've spent teaching here, not one has gone by where I don't make some kind of mistake. I always invent new ways of making mistakes. And sometimes I'll just altogether bungle it up. Sometimes because I'm careless, but more often because I care too much. But the saving grace in all of this has been the feedback that I receive from many corners. Feedback anonymously from the course evaluations, but also from the Committee on Teaching, very valuable comments, and perhaps most importantly, the conversations in person that I've had, most notably with graduate students. And all of this feedback I've received, gratefully and ungratefully. Some of it is quite critical, but all of it is crucial in shaping and evolving the way I teach. It's my impression that, and I should say, this feedback exists for all of us. We need only be open to it, to receive it with a proper spirit of humility. It's my impression that the Distinguished Teaching Award is not often given to those of us in the physical sciences, and by physical sciences I mean principally physics. I think I have several theories for this, and moving forward I would like to see that change. I would like to be a part of that change, to have more of us be recognized for effective teaching, and to learn from one another what works. Because at the end of the day, physics, and those of you in my 7B class know this very well, those of you who attended yesterday's class on dark energy, you understand that physics is a very powerful and beautiful subject. And it's it's so powerful and beautiful that it deserves to be shared. It has to be shared. So let me just thank many people who were involved in this process, the staff in the astronomy department, Dexter Stewart, our magnificent student affairs officer, Mary Minch and Raina Helgens for putting together my application twice. Let me thank also my chair, Imke de Potter, for allowing me the freedom to teach what I want, and equally as important, when I want. And although the award is not overdue at all, the gratitude for my wife is, I'm afraid, somewhat overdue. So let me thank her now for putting up with me. She says she doesn't like astronomy, but it's not true. And let me finally extend my appreciation to my 6-year-old son, Noah, for being such an enthusiastic test subject. And many of our experiments, what we learn from those experiments, I share every day with the students here. So thank you very much.
I am honored to introduce the next recipient of the Distinguished Teaching Award, Professor Munis Faruqi of the Department of South and Southeast Asian Studies. Professor Faruqi is an historian whose work has focused on the Mughal Empire during the 16th through the 18th centuries, and who has a particular interest in the complex relationship between religion and politics in South Asia. His courses, which include Introduction to the Civilization of Medieval and Modern India, Islam in South Asia, and Religious Nationalism in South Asia, generate an enormously positive response from students, as this brief but entirely representative sample of comments makes clear. He was an amazing professor. I loved coming to lecture. Awesome instructor. One class everyone should take before graduating. This was the best class I have ever taken at Cal, the best professor I've ever had. The instructor was amazing, all caps, and perfect. I wish everyone could take a class with Dr. Faruqi. The passionate enthusiasm of these students is all the more extraordinary given the difficulty of the courses in question, both in terms of the vast sweeps of time covered and the sensitivity of the issues addressed. Professor Faruqi's research and writing is characterized by a deep engagement with archival sources and also by a profound awareness of the social and political forces that shape the writing of history, both in the immediate aftermath of events and much later, through the production, for example, of national narratives. He brings these concerns into all of his teaching, working with students to confront difficult questions not only about the historical interactions between Hindu, Muslim, and other religious communities in South Asia, but also about the ways in which this history continues to be manipulated to serve a whole range of political ends in India and in Pakistan, as well as in the rest of the world. As one of his graduate students writes, in his courses, Professor Farooqi does not shy away from controversial material. Instead, he asks his students to carefully and critically evaluate the subjects and engage in thoughtful discussion on topics such as religious persecution, caste inequality, and nationalism. Given the obvious sensitivity of this subject material, members of the Committee on Teaching were struck above all by Professor Farooqi's ability to guide students beyond controversy and, in the words of his chair's nomination letter, to change the way his students see the world. If this sounds a bit inflated, just listen to a few more comments from his student evaluations. This course really changed my perspective on the nature of Hindu-Muslim relations. Farooqi has broadened my views on what occurred in India. I now view Indian history in a different light. This has been the most eye-opening class I have taken at Cal. I have learned more about India and the Mughals than I ever did living 21 years in India. Clearly, a class with Professor Farooqi offers much more than names, places, and dates. As one former undergraduate writes, perhaps one of the most admirable qualities of Professor Farooqi was his ability to encourage his students to stop obsessing over grades and become passionate about what they learn in class, to question the status quo, and to challenge what they thought to be the truth. This was the reason why most students would find themselves debating and discussing the material outside of class. I came out of his courses with a wealth of knowledge about South Asian history, but most importantly, I came out of his courses having acquired the valuable skill of critical thinking. The practice of thinking critically about historical narratives, of course, would not be possible without a thorough grounding in the narratives themselves, even or perhaps especially as they contradict one another. And you heard Professor Farooqi quite modestly say in the film that he doesn't try to cram a lot of stuff into his students' minds, but they would probably disagree. Students, in fact, tend to be awestruck by the sheer volume of knowledge that Professor Farooqi helps them to acquire over the course of a semester. Consider these comments written in response to the question, how much do you consider you learned from the course? So much, beyond words, so much, crazy amount of info in a very short time. An immense amount, an incredible amount, more than I could ever have imagined. I learned so damn much. So how does he do it? I'll close with the words of another former undergraduate student who puts it better than I could. Stepping into one of his classrooms is like embarking on an intellectual journey. While he lectures, students are transformed. He doesn't merely lecture. He acts, he role plays, he lets his enthusiasm shine through his words until his lectures come alive. I give you UC Berkeley distinguished teacher, Munis Farooqi.
Unlike Eugene, I actually have a prepared speech here. I wouldn't leave home without it. So allow me to just begin by saying thank you very much, Professor Brito, for your wonderful introduction. Knowing just how difficult and, yes, dare I say, tedious writing introductions can be, I really appreciate all the time and energy that you put into mine. Thank you. Thank you to all the folks who organized today's ceremony. I am deeply moved by your dedication and the seriousness with which you approach the necessity of good teaching at UC Berkeley. Thank you. Thank you to my colleagues in the Department of South and Southeast Asian Studies who have always encouraged me to teach what I want and in the way that I want. A special shout out, however, to my former chair, Professor Penny Edwards, for first recognizing my teaching and then nominating me for a DTA. Thank you, Penny. A thank you to my wife, Claire Talwalkar, who over the past 19 years has been an endless source of inspiration and advice as to how to improve my teaching. And yes, if any of my students are in the audience, you can blame my draconian attendance policy and my no electronics usage rule on her. And a thank you to my children, Ainaz and Sivan, for never allowing me to take myself too seriously and always reminding me that there is a language out there that is called non-academies. But my biggest thanks goes to my first teacher, my mother, Erna Ramane Faruqi. Growing up, she gave me many things, including endless affirmation and love, a deep sense of social responsibility, and a curiosity about the world. Her greatest gift, however, was a little harder for me to pin down. And the funny thing about this gift is that it, in fact, was completely inadvertent. You see, my mother is a German who has lived for almost 55 years in Pakistan. Remarkably, throughout this entire time, she has more or less maintained her thick German accent. Speak to her in English, and there it is. Speak to her in Urdu, and there it is again. When I was growing up, there was a very simple problem. People often had a hard time understanding her. In English, it was not just her confusion between ships and chips. So, the ships are floating on the sea would be the correct way, but she used to usually say, the chips are floating on the sea. Or her inability to pronounce V's and W's very well. But also the never-ending supply of malapropisms, my favorite. A stich in time will save you mine. That's right, this is not made up. Moved to Urdu, however, and she was always in really big trouble. Yes, her pronunciation is quite hellish, but her real Waterloo is grammar, especially past, present, and future tenses. Allow me to channel my mother here, and I quote her. I will to your tailor shop going to came. And this is where I come in. From an early age, I was not only translating for my mom and translating to my mom, but also translating for everyone else. Boy, was it a stressful job sometimes. And yet moving between 3 languages, to say nothing of a welter of accents, emotions, psychologies, and expectations, taught me much, including the importance of listening, the need to be quick on my feet, and oh yes, a never-ending sense that failure is always just around the corner. If I am a decentish teacher today, I have my mother first and foremost to thank. Vielen Dank für alles, Muttilein. मैं सब कुछ के लिए बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ. Now, I would be a real jerk if I were to end this speech on a how lucky I am to have my mother versus yours note. And so allow me to share 4 hard-earned teaching do's and don'ts. May these hitherto closely guarded secrets help pave the road for your teaching success and someday maybe earn you a teaching award. Let me start with the do's. Number 1. If a student sends you an email complimenting you on a great class or some such, I have the perfect hip response. Just type OSSIM space LML. Translation, awesome, love my life. Number 2, I hated to break it to you. Being on Facebook is no longer a sign of undergraduate cool. Try moving to Viber. Number 3, are you fearful of bad evals at the end of the semester? Well, fear no more. Just offer your students lots of extra credit for things that are essentially unrelated to your class. And barring that, bring a couple of Arizmendi pizzas the day you hand out your evals. Surefire winners both. Finally, folks, Comportment matters. Start working on your smile. Start working on your look of concern. And whenever possible, bring them together. Let me demonstrate. And so if someone asks you a silly question, for instance, why do Muslims hate us so much? Start with a smile, then bring in the look of concern, and you have something approaching this. Very reassuring, I've been told. Okay, here are my no-nos. Number one, no cultural references to 1980s, 1990s pop icons. Thus, no Depeche Mode, Aerosmith, or even Run DMC. Almost all our undergraduates are born after 1992. That said, you might even want to avoid Lady Gaga. She is so 2011. Number two, keep these three words in mind. Ronald Reagan? Who? Number three, avoid references to the recent Disney movie Frozen, or even being tempted to belt out a few lines in class from the song, Let It Go. Wrong age group. Finally, folks, comportment matters. And so in response to a silly question, for instance, why do Muslims hate us so much? Do not do any of these three things. Thank you for honoring me today.
It's my honor to introduce the final recipient of this year's Distinguished Teaching Award, Professor Ron Hasner from Political Science. This was one of those classes that I will tell my children about. I have slides from lecture printed and taped to my wall. I know, perhaps a little overboard, but I've sincerely appreciated this class. Well, I love how candid and bold he is. He's the type of dude I want to go out and have a beer with. He likes to teach. He's not some aloof intellectual oblivious to the concerns and needs of undergrads. Thank you for teaching us, actually teaching us. I repeatedly walked out of class saying, now that's what a lecture at the world's premier public institution of higher learning is supposed to be like. Ron Hasner is Associate Professor of Political Science and a scholar of international relations with a specialty in religion and politics. He came to Berkeley as an assistant professor in 2004, and he's flourished here in both teaching and scholarship. His research specialty is international security, focusing on the relationship between religion and conflict. In 2009, he published a much-acclaimed book entitled War on Sacred Grounds, which reviewers called, brilliantly argued, a tour de force. In this book, he explored how religious sites are contested, becoming flashpoints for political confrontation, and he also illuminated the conditions under which conflicts over holy sites have been resolved. In his teaching, Professor Hasner, in a similar manner, leads his students to consider some of the most vexing and troubling and seemingly unresolvable issues of this or any other age, and yet he introduces such topics in such a way as to inspire engagement with and pleasure in the exploration of complex and serious ideas. And even better than that, he inspires a feeling of agency and confidence on the part of students in terms of their own scholarship at Cal and their ability to craft meaningful futures after graduation. One of Professor Hasner's courses has achieved something approaching legendary status on campus, the political science course entitled War. In this 300-student upper division lecture, he's famous for in-class role plays and simulations. For example, to demonstrate a conceptual relationship between changes in technology and society, he calls upon 20 or so students to come to the front of the lecture hall, and he supplies them with 15-foot-long PVC piping in service of reenacting and analyzing ancient Roman battle formations. Another newer course entitled Religion and Conflict is fast gaining on the heels of war in terms of its reputation for impact. One student wrote at the end of term, "I'm graduating in 3 weeks, and until now, I never felt that I had accomplished anything really of academic worth. The process of paper writing has been a life-changing experience." Paper writing and life-changing? These two phrases are not often juxtaposed in student sentences, but their testimony to Professor Hasner's having successfully embraced the responsibility and challenge, not just of teaching students to write, but doing so in a large lecture class. His approach, detailed in his teaching materials, involves demystifying the process, which is an example of what he calls in his teaching statement, exposing the wizard behind the curtain. No wonder students say, "This was the class where I was instructed on writing in the most useful way." In a letter of support of Professor Hasner's nomination, his former PhD student, Jonathan Chow, observed that all professors teach their particular subjects, but not all of them act as if they teach people. Ron teaches people. This, I think, is at the heart of his genius as a teacher. So visit Barrows Hall during Ron's office hours, and he holds 3 to 4 office hours a week and separate ones for undergrads and graduate students. Visit his office hours, and you'll have to be careful not to trip over the students lining the hallways. Glance in his office door, which is reportedly always open, and you'll see students crowded onto his couches and chairs, leaning forward, engaged in deep conversation about class materials. His colleague in political science, Professor Wendy Brown, says that he treats office hours as an event rather than a duty. And he spends these countless hours animated by concern with students' development as thinkers, writers, and citizens. It's in that context and in that presence, explained a former student, where enthusiasm for what he did infected us as his belief in us turned into belief in ourselves. Professor Hasner has made me feel that maybe I could be a scholar too. Dr. Hasner has made it cool to love teaching. Ron is the best, yo. You taught me more than war, Professor. I give you 2014 Distinguished Teaching Award recipient, Ron Hasner.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Ironically, it's not so easy to find wise things to say about teaching at a teaching award ceremony. After all, half of the people in the room know a lot more about teaching than I ever will. I'm speaking of my fellow recipients here on stage with me, past teaching award recipients scattered in the audience, and members of the Committee on Teaching. What could I possibly tell them about teaching that they don't know already? So maybe in the future we should make it a point to invite people who are really bad at teaching to the ceremony. And, you know, they could learn something and we could make fun of them. The other half of the audience are people who have taught me, and I suspect Munis and Eugene as well, how to teach. These are the friends, family members, and colleagues who have influenced, encouraged, and supported our teaching. Since they are the inspiration for our teaching, what could we possibly tell them about it that they don't know already? Nonetheless, I'll try my best. I'll be brief since I was asked to keep my comments to under 20 minutes. 20, yes? 22? 2 minutes? Okay, I'm going to skip pedagogy. This is not good. I was going to say something about educational theory. Lesson plans. Yeah, I'm going to skip the part about corporal punishment because that's not. I'll be just a minute. I'm almost there. There you go. Syllabus. How am I doing on time? Syllabus design? No. Okay. Problem-based learning? No. Okay, here we go. Thank yous. Sorry, I'm making a mess. Yeah, so thank yous. I owe my love for learning and reading to my parents. They taught me how to speak in public, Come to think of it, they taught me how to speak, so there's that. But they also impressed on me how important it is to be professional in presenting one's ideas to an audience, and how clarity and neatness and structure are really just ways to signal to listeners that you respect them. My kids, Annie and Mikey, who are in the audience today, inspired me to be patient with my students, never to underestimate how much they already know or are willing to learn, and how to take great pleasure in the joys of someone else's discovery. They've also contributed unwittingly some great examples that I use in my lectures, particularly on how to combat terrorism. My wife, Laura, made it possible for me to turn teaching into a primary focus in my academic career. She's taught me to be kind to my students, to be generous with my time and my attention, to demand the highest standards, to set the highest and greatest expectations. She's also helped me to feed a lot of hungry graduate students over the years. Like her parents, she has dedicated her career to public education, reaching out to California's underprivileged students and offering them fair access to educational opportunities. Her parents, who have dedicated their lives to that cause and to this great university, are a constant inspiration for my teaching. So thank you, Carolyn and Jay. In the field of political science, my greatest role model, teacher, and mentor is Scott Sagan, himself an award-winning scholar and educator who's here today. Though he teaches at a vastly inferior private university not far from here, he showed me how to draw students in with visuals, exercises, simulations, how to provoke excitement about some of the more somber topics in the field of international security, and how to dedicate yourself, heart and soul, to teaching. Like other of my colleagues in Berkeley's political science department, he has modeled how to speak to kids about the dangerous and difficult world we live in, and how to convince them that they have the power to change it for better. My greatest debt, however, is not to my elder colleagues, but to a small group of younger colleagues, the graduate student instructors who I've had the privilege of working with over the years. When students speak kindly about my teaching, what they really mean is that they had outstanding GSIs, graduate student instructors, in my classes. These graduate students are the ones who translate, elucidate, and implement my lectures. And despite my best efforts at meeting with my students individually, it is through my GSIs that my students get to know me. They do their teaching where the rubber hits the road. For better or worse, this university places the primary burden of teaching on the shoulders of graduate students. They teach twice as many undergraduates as graduate students at our Ivy League competitors do, and they do so for a fraction of the compensation. And they have done it with great skill, unrelenting enthusiasm, true dedication, innovation, and creativity. Most importantly, they have done it with love. Love of teaching and love of students. With your permission, I'll read the names of the graduate students that I have taught with undergraduate classes here at Berkeley. Ali Bond, many times over. Kattenbush, Valeria Barbero, Jonathan Chow, Jennifer Dixon, Emily Shaw, Rachel Stern, Robin Klein, Jen Lester, Angelo Gonzalez, Scott Field, Ben Oppenheim, Ray Lee, Nick Calabresi, George Wilcoxon, George Gardner, Christian Ford, Nina Kelsey, Jason Klochek, many times over, Andrew Bertoli, Ting Mi, Ben Bartlett, Ryan Phillips, Nabil Ansari, Rochelle Turman, Athmea Jayaram, Deirdre Martin, Samuel Zeitlin, Adam Lichtenheld, Ria Meyerskaw, Denise Vanderkamp. This award is theirs as much as it is mine, if not more so. For their contribution to my teaching and for all they have taught me over the years, I thank them from the bottom of my heart. Can I leave that there?
Aren't you glad you came today? Yes. We appreciate the Cal Alumni Association's longstanding participation and support of the Distinguished Teaching Award. The Cal Alumni Association was founded by the original graduates of the University of California in 1872. It's my pleasure to introduce the newest president of the association and longtime Cal Bear, Cynthia Schroeder, class of '91. Cynthia.
It's an absolute pleasure to honor you today. Cal's Distinguished Teaching Award recipients are the best, the brightest, and most inspiring teachers, professors, and educators here at UC Berkeley. As the president of the Alumni Association, I have the pleasure of coming to campus on a frequent basis to connect with students, faculty, staff, and alumni, an experience that I recommend and wish for all Cal alumni. This past year, I had an opportunity to reconnect with one of my favorite professors, Jack Citron, 25 years after taking my first class with him. Something he said struck me during our conversation. He mentioned that professors didn't necessarily know the impact of their classes on their students' lives unless they came back to campus and shared with them like I did that day. So, I'm here today on behalf of the 475,000 living alumni around the world to tell every past and current Cal educator, professor, and instructor that yes, you have made a huge impact on our lives, and it happens to be lifelong. While you might not see or hear from many of your former students in the years following graduation, I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that each Cal graduate has still one, if not several professors that have made a difference in their lives. Truly, the Cal faculty gives Berkeley students the greatest gifts of knowledge, discovery, and intellectual curiosity. You challenge us to think outside the box, to re-examine what we believe to be true when we step onto this campus for the first time. You shared your passion, you encouraged us, and you pushed us to expand our minds. For this, on behalf of all Berkeley alumni, I'm delighted to thank you and give you congratulations on this special honor being bestowed upon you today. We honor and thank you for all that you do to ensure Cal's position as a premier global university, a public institution committed to teaching and research, a university committed to excellent graduate and undergraduate experiences inside and outside the classroom. The Cal Alumni Association is deeply committed in sharing the special gift of knowledge and intellectual thought leadership emanating from the UC Berkeley campus with our global alumni community through our campus partnerships, programs, and lectures. Thank you for helping us to inspire, engage, and inform Cal's alumni. Now it is my pleasure and honor to provide you with a special certificate acknowledging your outstanding contributions to this university. And also on behalf of the Cal Alumni Association, I want to invite you to host one of our Cal Discovery trips as a faculty host and lecturer. Thank you again for all that you've done for Cal and our alumni. Congratulations.
Thank you, Cynthia. Kathy Koshland, Vice Provost for Teaching, Learning, Academic Planning, and Facilities, will bring our ceremony to a close with some remarks from her perspective as someone with perhaps the widest and deepest view of teaching in all its permutations on campus, and also as a staunch supporter of excellent teaching here at Cal. Kathy.
Thanks, Glenda. This really is a very, very special occasion, and I'm happy to see this campus continue to support teaching and to recognize the teaching of our winners today, but also over the past few years has made an increasing investment in supporting our faculty in developing their teaching. And I'm grateful for that. I will continue to champion that because I think there's still more work to be done. In recognizing our finest teachers, we come to realize that there's no one way to be a distinguished teacher. I want to share with you some of the words from previous DTA recipients on their teaching philosophies. From the sciences, where Ollie Hald in mathematics, DTA 1990, describes learning as a messy process, stating, "Just as in real life, my problems may have several answers. This irritates everyone. Students want precise, tidy problems. My job is to teach them how to take messy, vague questions and transform them into a precise model which can then be attacked. From the social sciences, where linguistics professor Lena Mickelson, DTA 2010, offers a principle that guides her teaching. Everyone in the room must learn something from every class, including me. And I think our 3 recipients today would echo that. To the humanities, where Givas Goodman in English, DTA 2005, asks, why should students try hard and then harder if their teacher is not doing the same? With passion, and this is so important, with pleasure. I take my work to be just a token of respect, both for who they are now and where they can go, which is always further. And from our professional schools, where Rich Lyons, currently Dean of the Haas School, DTA 1998, reflects on the moments of discovery in the classroom. And he says, lower the boundaries when you teach. Hear what the students hear. See what the students see. When you connect at that level, the students will share the joy of your discovery. Teaching styles differ as broadly as teaching philosophies. Ulla Taylor in African American Studies, DTA last year in 2013, says, each class is an opportunity to build upon ideas, evaluate evidence, show the shifts in the thinking of major figures, and engage in the debates that connect the past to our contemporary world. To Stephen Booth, professor of English, DTA 1992, who insists upon taking students seriously enough to argue with them, seriously enough to snap their heads off if they cannot show me logical basis for their assertions, and seriously enough to retreat in open confusion when they disagree with me and show me that I have in fact misunderstood the materials I have presented. To Anna Adhikari in Statistics, DTA 2006, who believes lectures are collaborations, not presentations. Students and I work together, and learning is a physically active process. Like building, the hands must get dirty. And to Frederick Cruz in English, DTA 1995, for whom he says, it pleases me greatly to learn that curmudgeons too may be eligible for consideration as distinguished teachers. At the end of the day, each of these teachers has found a way to connect with students, incite their curiosity and wonder, push them into new intellectual spaces and understandings, as well as to share and build knowledge that serves to help us understand our world and make it a better place. This year in particular is special. Under the leadership of Chancellor Dirks, we've set forth 3 pillars for the university to stand upon, one of which is focused on undergraduate education. And our Distinguished Teaching Award, Berkeley's seminal award, embodies the essence of what our campus should be striving for in regard to teaching excellence. Not divergent from research, but as a part of a varied and mutually beneficial relationship. And I want to note that the first inaugural gift to the DTA Endowment Fund, which we've established, was made by a former DTA winner, David Slansky, who I hope maybe is here today. Recognize him for that first move into helping endow this award. Let me just add an additional note echoed by David Littlejohn in Journalism, DTA 1985. Very few teachers can match their professional work and their classwork as near perfectly as this. One of the great advantages of Berkeley, I believe, is that so many faculty members are able to lead intellectual lives as unified as mine. And again, I think that connection between research and teaching, discovery and learning is something that this campus really does believe in and embodies, and our distinguished teachers certainly embody that. One important note to recognize, in all this celebration of teaching, we should not forget that in order to teach, there needs to be someone to learn. Teaching and learning go hand in hand as a collaborative dialogic process. Congratulations to our winners. Thank you.
All right. It's almost over except for some more applause and some thanks. I'd like to ask our recipients this year to stand and be recognized, and let's hear your applause for them, please. And I know there are other distinguished teachers in the house. I'm going to ask the former recipients of the Distinguished Teaching Award to come down on the stage and also be recognized. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to a few individuals and organizations who've really made a wonderful ceremony possible. Vice Provost Koshland and her Office of Teaching and Learning and Academic Planning and Facilities, Richard Freistadt and Melanie Green from the Center for Teaching and Learning. Yes. The Educational Technology Services and Cal Performances. Our ceremony's over, but the celebration is just beginning. Please join the recipients. Across the way at the Alumni House, we'll have toast and merriment. Thank you all, and, and good evening.